Welcome to the Business Unscripted podcast. We're here to share real-life insights, practical strategies, and the honest lessons that we have learned from our own mistakes because, frankly, we have been in your shoes. So whether you need help with operations, accountability, financial knowledge, sales, or maybe just getting your mindset right, we are here, and this is the right spot for no-fluff conversations and tools that work. So grab your favorite cup of joe. Let's jump into the show. Let's jump into the show, ladies and gentlemen. It is another Friday morning, which means you're here with the Business Unscripted podcast, or at least you're maybe starting to, do all that fun rolling in and everything like that. But for those of you who don't know who we are, it's my name's Dave Worden, and I'm here with one of my business partners, Duarne Bernhagen, and we do this show every single Friday for you, the business owner who maybe is, looking for somebody who can share some advice, some strategy. Maybe you can learn from our mistakes because, Duarne, me and you, we probably make a few. We're not perfect, but you can learn from our mistakes, learn from the other things that we're helping our clients with in business as well. I've been in business for over, 10 years now, and it's my third venture, so we learned, I've failed a few times, but that's okay. But 20 years in executive leadership and all that fun stuff, right? So you're in the right spot if you're a business owner and you want some advice. So we, hope you enjoy the show. So let's jump in. Duarne, brother, welcome back. I know last week you were doing all the fun legal things that sometimes you have to do when you're going through a big change like we've talked about. So how are things?
Absolutely.
How are things?
Look, things have been very hectic, and I'm looking forward to a mostly quiet weekend. We had, so you're right. We did a company change. It was a corporate restructure. We changed from one type of business to a different type of business registration on paper, and there was lots of legal benefits for doing so, but also created a lot of work. Whilst we absorbed all of our brands, and with the new company, what tended to, and this is something we'd been working on since January, we finally bit the bullet and decided to do the final push. Lots and lots of stuff to take care of. New contracts for clients, new contracts for the staff, new bank accounts, lots of legal related matters to consult with lawyers because certain situations occurred during the process and that we didn't foresee. And as well planned as it could have been, shit still hit the fan in a couple of areas. So it's
okay. All right. The proverbial, shit hits the fan sort of comment. What does shit hit the fan look like for you? Because I'm pretty sure everybody's got different shit, and their fan might be a little bit different. Maybe we're high powered. So how much shit got on the walls and all over the place? As much as you want to share, of course.
Yeah. Look, like the long and the short of it is with the new contract re-signing for the staffing side of things, we had every person, so over 25 staff, signed new agreements with the transition, with the exception of one. And one decided
you had to hold out. Typical,
held out. They put up reasons, and yeah, look, we spoke to our lawyer about it, and the lawyer's basically given us some good advice. We still need to push forward with that, so I can't share too much about what that advice is at this point. Okay. It's still got to be actioned. It's still a work in progress, but
still open.
Hey, buddy. One thing that I can share is that this employee was actually assigned to a client, and the client learned a very valuable lesson, and that was, yes, if you can have systems in place to monitor and review your staff, but if you're not using those systems and checking them, then things are going to slip through the cracks. And in his particular instance, 12 months worth of slipping through the cracks when he did his back checking and reviewing to find that underperformance by about 50% of the output that was needed. So I think was the case, and a few other little things.
A concern that I think I've heard a lot from, business owners who are questioning, does a VA make sense for me? and it's that particular situation is I can't control what they're doing, right? Or I don't know if, you know, the output that they say they're doing and the hours they're spending are the hours that they're doing. So obviously your experiences right now where the client, obviously, you know, and ultimately it is the client responsibility. You know, we're paying for an output to be given to us. And so, you know, it'd be very difficult for you as a, you know, like a company owner that's hiring these VAs to just have everybody in one place, which a lot of times you don't. So what advice can you give, right, to without giving away too much information of what this person was doing wrong?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, look,
Yeah.
in this particular instance, systems were in place, but they were never used due to circumstances which caused the client to be lulled into a false sense of security. And
Okay.
I'll explain what I mean by that in a moment.
Yeah.
So
I feel like there's some undertones and some innuendos going on in there, but
yeah,
go
absolutely.
Go ahead.
It was rather intriguing because I couldn't understand it when I was going through doing a review with the staff. With the client. He was looking through his systems, which very, very easily report all of the output from the his staff member.
Okay.
And he hadn't looked at it for 12 months.
Wait,
and
so
I couldn't understand.
he had a report.
He had it constantly reporting,
and he just never looked at
he
it?
never checked the results. So he made the assumption that everything was okay. So the systems were in place.
Okay.
But they needed a manual process to check them from his side, just to basically as a sanity check, right? And it seems really obvious, but 50% reduction in output when he's handling the billing, and I would have expected to be something got seen and noted. But when I pushed the point with my client, what came back was he had very good feedback of the staff members' customer service from multiple clients of his. So that made him feel like everything was working and everything was going well. There was billable hours going out, but he didn't realize they weren't as high as they should have been. And on top of that, he was getting contacted 10 to 20 times a day with, I'm just updating you. Hey, just touching base to tell you that I've just done this on almost every day. So he was lulled into a false sense of security.
Yeah.
Yes, over communication from his staff member, which made him feel like, oh, everything's happening because I'm getting lots of communication back. So he felt comfortable enough not to check the actual logs, which would have shown a different story and forced him to take a look. Now, when this all happened, of course, we had to talk to our client and explain it. In this instance, the staff member circumvented our process and went directly to the client to complain about something about the contract, which a restructure internally had nothing to do with the end user client. So therefore wasn't communicated because it was not making any difference to their side of things at that point. That would have come later.
But I want to hit something really quick before we get too far away from it. And it's just this idea that the system was there. Your client was probably overwhelmed doing a ton of other things. So they just assumed that they didn't hear anything negative. So everything was fine. And I think that's the part that we want to hit on, is that you never want to just assume just because you haven't heard anything or you're being over communicated that things are fine. And this is where, you know, we talk about AI in this podcast a lot because we're both into it a lot. This is where kind of evolving the system to include some sort of AI review, right? Where, you know, now you have the AI, you know, at the end of every week kind of looks at all the hours and trends or picks up things that are out of the ordinary or don't seem to be in line on where they should be, right? And the expectations, and you set those expectations in your AI system. And then when something does stand out as the anomaly, then it can either ping you through an email, can ping you through, a push notification, depending on how you set it up. But I think that's the piece that you don't want to miss now, is that, yes, you can have these systems. And in 6 months ago, a lot of these systems still required a lot of manual review at the end of kind of seeing it and where you're at. But now the beauty of where we're at today in AI is that you can then set up that next level of, hey, now I'm going to take this manual review, take everything that I want to look at in terms of KPIs and metrics and trending, and turn it into an AI run automation that checks all of that information for me and then just reports out when there is an anomaly, and things need to be looked into and checked. So
crazy enough, though,
I don't know if
in this particular instance, Dave, is a simple report could have been created or an automation with the system that the client was using. And it could have simply just came up and been alerted that there was a negative based on what the KPI threshold was. And it could have been sent out on a weekly, monthly, quarterly, whatever. And this was something that could have been set up. And that's just a simple automation capability without even going into the AI side to at least tell you what something's wrong, and to give you a chance to go and dig deeper or do whatever you need to make, to investigate that. So it doesn't always have to be AI in this case either. It could just be automation to generate a report and send it, right? We have the tools, and a lot of systems support either solution.
Right. The beauty of that too, I guess, when I think of AI, is just AI is everything now, because there's some sort of even automation is some sort of artificial process that you put together, and AI is kind of that same thing. It's changing things together. But building that, you hit the key point, right? People mention that you have KPIs and you're not aware when you have variances from the KPIs because it's not in your face, right? It's not monitored anywhere. You may have the data someplace. You're like, oh yeah, we track that. Okay, but how do you use that data that you're tracking? Yeah. If you don't have
who's looking at the data
system, who's looking at it? How are they getting the data? And how informative is the data, right? Because there's a different. I'll use finance as an example, right? Accounting. There's a very big difference of me giving a high detailed variance report with KPIs and spark lines and plus or minuses on revenue goals or gross profit percentages and all that kind of stuff, versus me printing out a general ledger that has all the transactions and giving it to a business owner. Which one do you think is going to be more informative in terms of ease of making a decision and knowledge of where their business is at? Option A or option B?
Option A.
Option A, right? Option B, of course, is going to be more informative because you have more information at your fingertips. But if you don't have the time to go through it, you don't have the time to parse it.
Well, let's go back a step. It's not even about the time in some cases. Depending on what your systems and what the person's doing, you may not even have, it may not be time related. It may be skill set related. You may not have the skill set to understand everything without it being pointed out in obvious detail to you. And that's where setting up the right automation, the right summary. This is one of the things that we put together with all of the AI assistants we have now. We take SEO reporting and pay-per-click reporting and then turn that into a 1-2 page summarized understanding for our customers. So we can take that 15-20 page report, still included if you want to look at it, but we'll give you the summary overview so you can quickly see, am I winning or am I losing? If I'm losing, how bad am I losing? If I'm winning, how good am I winning? And
it's a fine balance too, because when you're like a service provider, you feel like you have to give them more information, that you have to feel like you have to give them more in order to actually like justify your service, right?
Show your value.
Your value. When in reality, your only goal is to meet their needs, right? What is important to them?
Yeah.
Give advice, right? Say, well, hey, maybe we should also look at this. I'll include that in the report, but don't overwhelm them, because remember, they're busy doing what they're good at. I think of one client of mine, highly successful, real estate agent, and for me, to me, it was, initially, hey, we're going to get you some financial statements. We're going to, give you the insights that you need. And the more and more I work with them, I realize, hey, we're going to pare this back a little bit. We're just going to give you the information that matters. Plus, we're going to help you kind of manage better, so for example, he showed me a spreadsheet that he has that, he's tracking and working with his team. I'm like, man, give me that. We'll just turn it into a live dashboard. We'll let even your team be able to log in and you guys can actually manage it more effectively. And so those are the things that are value. Like, how do you take your client's time depending on where you're at? And again, and I said this yesterday in a presentation panel discussion I was on. I understand there's not going to be many people that have the passion around AI that you and I do, okay? To really dive in, do it 13 hours a day, and be willing to, use it in a way that's going to help. But there are going to be the people that have interest in it that are like, oh, I know I need to do something, but I just can't do it all. Great. That's why, right, there's people like you and I, because we can then take it that next level. You can just be open to the fact of, hey, yeah, I want to start doing something with AI in my business. I don't know what it is. Let's have a conversation and just dive in and try it and just test it. I was asked a question, like, how did you get where you are today from where you were with no technical background in under a year? And I'm like, because I was willing to make mistakes. I was willing to learn. And
failure is learning.
Yep. I was willing to learn, to fail. I was willing to go multiple versions of something in order to make it right. And don't get me wrong, like, there's a lot of frustrated back and forth with my, Claude or my, OpenAI or whatever, with, maybe some F-bombs in there, dropped, and hopefully when they take over the world, they don't come after me. Like, really, I'm like, man,
why the F did you do that? I never told you to F and do that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, there's so many frustrated times but you have to be willing to just test and try and get in there. And just get started.
Make mistakes, learn from those mistakes. It's like anything in life. It's really interesting. Like, I was watching something on YouTube yesterday. I was having a bit of downtime over lunch, and I was watching, and there was a Bali-based Indonesian workshop that makes reproduction.
Do you have any questions, by the way, while you're here? Like, I see the viewers, like, drop them down below. You're always open to have questions, and we'll answer them live on the show. But sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, they make reproduction versions of classic European cars, Aston Martins, Gullwing style, Mercedes, all that sort of cool stuff, and a couple of Japanese, like the was it the 2000 GT 2000, which like 200 were made of it, the Toyotas.
Oh, that's a while ago. Yeah, wow. Thinking back to like Fast and the Furious, the drift. Man,
we're talking, like, you can't buy parts for these cars, so they manufacture every single component in Indonesia and Bali. They've got 6 molds made out of wood, and everything's been made from diagrams. Everything's been made from blueprints they've been able to secure, from photos that they've had printed on tarpaulins so they could blow up and look at them and try and get their measurements and everything. They even create their own glass. They do their own components for everything. It's like 100,000 components across the 5 cars that they build. And they use drivetrains from vehicles that are available in country. And the whole reason they do is because you can't import vehicles over a certain age into the country in Indonesia. So this is their workaround to make these classic cars for the local enthusiasts who want them. And they do beautiful, beautiful replica vehicles. And the reason I was saying this is because one of the questions that was asked by the foreman, who assistant to the owner, was, do the people who come in here know how to do the job? No, because there's a huge car enthusiast group in this country, but nobody knows. So we train each and every one of them. And because there's so many components and everything is handmade, like, we take into consideration the cost of failure on every single vehicle. There is a cost of failure, and we factor that in with our staff. Our staff will fail, and that's okay. We expect them to fail from time to time. We expect them to mess up a component or a part. We expect to replace that part and have to build it again. We're going to have to recover the time and the material to do that. And we're okay with that. That's factored into the price to the client. And when I was hearing that, I was like, it's so obvious, But how many people in business tend to do that? Whether it's with things that we're learning for ourselves, do we factor in the time of failure into the costs that we do? Do we factor in the cost of learning how to do something new? Do we factor the fact that we've got staff who may take a little longer to do things because they're learning? How do we do that? And it comes down to that question that we've always asking, are you selling time or are you selling value? If you sell value, you can quote that sort of thing as part of your value.
Right.
But you can't do that if you're selling on time. So it was a really powerful statement that I didn't expect to get from that particular show. From a YouTube show. It was like showing about these really cool cars that they were making.
Well, and it's a good concept that I think a lot of people overlook. Not just, and people may call it research and development costs. People call it failure costs, however you want to word it. Like it's impactful one way or another. And it does need to be factored into your entire pricing model and everything. And it was funny, like you mentioned, the time investment needed to, kind of build something. And the beauty of the last, 3.5 months now or whatever, that Claude's been, kind of really where it's at. But and it's still improving. And so if you just think of where it was 3-4 months ago to where it is now, it's vastly improved. But for me, the biggest thing I keep saying, I might not be having large in terms of growth or impact in terms of like new finalized products, but I think of all the stuff that we're building for our processes and then clients, and then we're investing that time right now into potential impacts in the near future, because we have to make sure it works now to then easily transition it later. Right. So we're working out all the kinks, so some of that's going to happen in your realm when you're building these, or you're working with somebody to build it, is you have to realize that it's not just like overnight and then you're going to have this finalized product, especially if you're building something from the ground up. Like, and we've, I think, chatted in previous episodes, you have your long-term wish list, but the idea is, what's V1, right? What's that first version look like, that it's like, okay, this is a working product. Now we're going to like put it into, effect and then start using it. And then from there, we can make changes and improvements once it's viable. And that's kind of what I'm looking at now with a lot of like the command center we're building, for all of our, executive and owners, is I'm working out all the kinks on my end, because I know that when I get those worked out, the implementation side is going to be so much easier, and then it's going to be that quicker turnaround. So I can't look at the time that I'm doing now and just being like, oh, I didn't really sign a new client today or anything like that. But I did invest, right, 6 or 7 hours to improve products, and this is what I improved, right? This is the process, and this is the efficiencies that I was able to gain today. And so that's how you kind of have to think of some of these things, is that it's not going to be a direct income right away, but you have to realize, what are the hours, and are they good hours? Like, did you actually create something or move something forward? And I think that's the biggest piece when you're figuring, how do I just get started with AI, or how do I catch up? One, you're not that far behind, actually. Like, only about 8% of small business owners have really actively implemented, AI fully, kind of in their workflows and their, processes. So you got 92% of people that know about it, right? 84% have played around with it, but only 8% are really using it to actually impact their business on a day-to-day basis in terms of small business owners. So you're not that far behind if you think about it.
No. And one fun fact about that, like, I had one business owner tell me today that their friend who they'd referred to me to talk was a huge Claude user, used a lot, was always using Claude, loved it. And so assuming, of course, I go, oh, okay, cool. Must be doing some coding, must be doing some regular usage.
Mm-hmm.
I end up speaking to their referral that they sent through and barely touching the surface, but doing 500 times more than any of their colleagues in the same industry with it. So it just makes you realize everyone's at a different level. Everyone's got a different use case. Someone came into my office, was it yesterday or something, looked at my screen and said, why do you have 7 screens? That just seems excessive. And I'm like, well, this one's for coding. This one's for outputs. This one's for monitoring. This one's for chatting. This one's for email. This one's for videos and LinkedIn when I'm not on videos. And like, oh, okay, it makes sense. You've got a reason for having this. Cool. Makes sense. All right, good. But everybody's different. Everyone's got a different setup. And we have to appreciate everyone's at a different level and everyone's trying to get a different output. And like one of the conversations I had with an accounting client of mine back who we supply staffing to, or will be very soon supplying staffing to back in Australia, was around use cases. And one of the use cases I gave was something, Dave, you and I have spoken about, where I think the biggest boom in AI for businesses soon is going to be customized applications to solve internal problems. And this is what you're providing to your customers right now. This is something through Triumph you're doing. And when I positioned that, they were like, whoa, I hadn't even considered that. And I said, well, absolutely.
Right.
You know, we've built internal systems. In fact, we set a target for our internal development team that I wanted a plugin for WordPress or an app idea on my desk by Friday to tell me what they suggest would be a good app and give me a use case scenario for that app and who it's for. And I was really quite impressed with the solutions that came through. And the next step of that is go away and build it. You know, you've got a week to go and build that. Now, that's something that normally wouldn't have been thought of without the use of AI. Without using an AI tool set, you can't really do that. And like I sat with a developer friend of mine. He has a game development business. They've got quite a successful off-road truck game on mobile devices and a monster truck game that's been running for over a decade. And they've done well out of both. And I said to him, let's do some testing with some local GPUs so we can run some local models. So we start testing on his machine and everything's going well. And he just started, I could see him getting frustrated. He's like, do this. And it wasn't doing it. It's like, oh, take me 2 minutes to jump in and change the code and do that. And I'm like, yeah, but we're testing the functionality on how this works in its native format. Yes, but it's so frustrating to me because this, and then he shared with me that the way he works with these tools was very different to the way a vibe coder works with these tools, where a vibe coder will try and get it to build 99% of the solution by describing, where he's actually building over 80% of the solution, then getting vibe coding to help him finish off the more boring stuff or the complex,
So he likes the detail minutia of the build, and then he uses it a different way to then
absolutely. And just seeing that was fascinating to me because I was like, wow. But then he was able to help me come up with a workflow for a solution that I want to put in place using localized AI models and frontier models in combination. And it made a lot of sense. And we're able to do things very quickly, very high quality in the testing that we did. And I was genuinely shocked by that. So I think we're dealing with very interesting times for people. There is so many options available for people to use these tools as they go through, and they just need to work out how do they want to use them and what's the outcome that they want to get for their business. Like, what's your goal? As coders would know, we'll build your goal out for you.
And I think, you know, when you get down to it, don't think like you have to be where we're at, right? I didn't start here. You know, I think you and I, in terms of AI, have been adopters of it since the beginning. And while it definitely was not, it was more frustrating probably at the beginning than it is now, for sure, with the abilities that it had. But I think what it really comes down to is, you know, just start. Like, everybody starts from nothing and then you grow. Like, AI is the same way. You're going to start, you're going to get an understanding. You're going to say, hey, how can I do this? And that's what you need to be. when I think about it, is you have to be curious, like be the curious George of the situation, and just chat and just say, I've had this idea. How would you approach this? And that's a beautiful way to it. And then you're not trying to, it's going to give you the steps that it would take, right? And walk you through it, and give you that insight, that instead of saying, hey, I want you to go build this is how I want you to do it, where maybe you're newer and you don't know how to do it. Just say, you know what, we have this problem. How could we potentially solve this? What would you do to solve this?
That's it.
And
research this for me, find out how other people have solved the problem.
Yeah. And so, when I think about it, I love helping people build something. But here's the thing, and I've said this before, like, I'm not doing anything that you can't do yourself. I'm not. Like, everybody can do what we do right now because of where we're at. So I'm not selling you some secret sauce or some different thing. What I am, and I talk to my clients about, or what anybody's doing is you're partnering with them because of the trust you have in that person to help you get the result that you want. One, but two, like, they're saving you time, they're saving you energy, where you don't have to, do it yourself, which is the biggest thing I tell a lot of people. It's like, hey, if you don't have 13 hours a day to like keep up on it and maintain it, like, yeah, I get it. Like, that's probably why it would be a good partnership here. The anxiety around it could be something that is frustrating or people don't want to deal with, is another one. And then that partnership is a big one. It just, the advisory, the outside thought, hey, where are you at? What's going on? Have you thought about this?
I see a lot.
That kind of stuff,
The one I'm seeing a lot right now is people they're able to explain what they want. They're able to get to a point, and then they get to that point where, like if you're building an app, for example, you have to have an understanding on where to host the app. You have to be able to do something so you can get the app to display in a format that's usable.
Right.
And they can explain that, but then they get to that point where I don't know how to launch it. I don't know how to set up a hosting environment for it. And yes, these tools can help you with that now, but having a basic understanding and technical background does certainly help with that. And for some people, they just go, you know what, it's a little too hard. I'm going to throw in the towel. I don't want to do any of this anymore. And that's where I totally get utilizing outside sources and getting them to help you, whether it's train you or do it for you. But one thing I pointed out to a client the other day was, you can if you need custom internal software nowadays, you don't have to go spend $100,000 on getting it built and take 6 months to do it. It could be done in a couple of months. And if you think about it, like, we have an internal project at the moment for a client, and it was presented to me today to review, or actually a few days ago, I got a chance to review it today, the plan. And I'm looking at it going, well, this is great, but have you considered that this is something that other people in our client's industry is going to need? And they may not be using WordPress. So maybe instead of building it as a plugin in WordPress, why don't we build this as a script that can be ran over the top of any website and as an overlay and do what it needs to do? And while we're doing it, why don't we brand it as an internal product that we can then resell to other clients in the future? So we'll productize it. And it was suddenly just a mindset shift. And it was like, well, yeah, the client could pay for that, or we could get the client to invest in their own solution. We'll customize and build it for them. We'll subsidize a portion of it and build a solution that we can resell in the future as a product to others. That's not completely narrowed in to solve one problem. It solves one problem across multiple client bases.
Well, and that's kind of like you mentioned. A lot of people, like, they probably find a solution or software and they're like, man, I love this, but it just doesn't do this. Great. Like, you could build something similar, but that does that, or, if you don't want to take the time, then you just have to deal with the missing link that a lot of people, sometimes don't want to. And, you kind of mentioned, I think the one thing you have to consider, which a lot of people don't, they're like, oh, I'll just build it myself. There are going to be ongoing costs that you still have to pay, right? Especially as it becomes a larger platform database. You have storage costs, right? You have processing costs, different things that you still have in the background that are manageable. But if you're talking tens of transactions or processes a week versus tens of thousands of transactions a week, the costs are going to be different. So there are some things to consider when evaluating, hey, what do I want to build, and does it make sense for us to custom versus not?
Absolutely. And the other thing you got
maybe you
to
want
factor
control of it.
into is integration into third-party platforms. Whether it's an API token usage, there's an ongoing cost there. If you build it, is it going to support multiple platforms? You can move that in the future, or is it locked into one? Are you hard coding? Are you making it a variable? And every time there's a change in a third party, like if you're using something that needs to tie into the API of Xero, so that's the back end functionality of Xero to get functions, or the back end of QuickBooks, you need to factor in that they change those time to time, and you'll need to rebuild that portion that works to make sure it talks properly. So it's not a set and forget. There is going to be an ongoing maintenance. There's going to be an ongoing ability to fix and check what's going on. It's not a one-time cost set, one and done. And that's something that people generally overlook. Like I was chatting to my brother earlier today, and he was saying, oh, look, I'm loving Claude. I'm doing some great things with Claude. I'm building these apps. I'm going to be doing this, this idea that I've got. And I'm like, that's great. Have you put any work into hardening your apps yet? Question mark comes back. What do you mean harden? And I'm like, well, you've got to build the security and make sure your compliance is in place and make sure the integrity of the app is there, so it can't be, your customer information or your sensitive information inside the app isn't compromised. And it just opens up the doors of little education when you're doing this helps. But getting started, you don't need to know that right away. This is where just educating yourself along the way. And like I said to him, I said, don't stress too much. Here's a prompt to give to Claude when you're ready. That'll help you build out, and it'll ask it, what can I do to make this better? And he was, oh, that's cool.
Well, right. So there's I can't remember. I wish I would remember the guy's name. But he's like a coding guy, and he had, and the beauty of if you are getting started on some of this stuff too is, GitHub, which is obviously like this open, one, if you have coding, you're going to store it there. But you can choose private or public. And a lot of these sort of like companies or these private people too, they will post a public GitHub, and that shares some of the skills or some of the different things that they're doing that they are sharing with their team. And on their YouTube videos, they share the link to their GitHub. Now, obviously, if it's something that maybe has 2 stars versus 90,000 stars, you might want to trust the 90,000 stars, and stars is a way that you can like upvote things on GitHub, right, that are open source. But, I found one the other day for coding, and I've used it now a lot. I use it a ton. And it's a command. It's like improve code architecture. And the point is that it will literally, you can point it at the entire app, or you can point it at one singular piece and what you're trying to improve. And what it'll do is it's going to analyze it, and then it gives you an actual report and says, hey, here's what your current version, here's how we suggest that like you would improve it. Like, maybe you have like 3 different pages that are individually calling an LLM, where the improvement would be have all 3 go to one caller so that it's consistent instead of it being, 3 different versions. And then it will give you anywhere from 2 to 6 suggestions of how to improve. And then once you go from there, it will then walk you through an interview process of, hey, here, we're going to go through number 1. Like, is this what you're trying to do? Does this make sense? It'll keep analyzing. It's not going to change anything yet until you actually then approve it afterwards. So it's a really cool skill that I have now been using. I pretty much use it 5-6 times a day. But ultimately, the goal would be on every platform is that as you're making changes, you want to make sure that what it's doing is still not going to break anything. So you just run it as a routine on every one of your projects at the end of every week. Hey, run this skill, and then just review changes from the week and make sure, are there any suggested improvements? And it says like, hey, this is mandatory, or this is like worth research, and then it gives you that sort of response so that you can decide what you want to do. So that's been something cool that I found this week. and I'll have to find the actual YouTube video from the one that I found it from, and the gentleman that I watched the video on. But so there's things like that where find resources, find different things that make sense, and then follow them. But then pick and choose what you want to implement. Like, you don't have to do everything. You don't have to match somebody one for one. There's a lot of people I subscribe to that I don't watch all their videos because what they're talking about is not something I'm trying to do right now.
There's a lot of hype out there too. A lot of trends, a lot of hype, a lot of crap just to try and get the followers and because you got to remember, every time you get a play on a video, that goes towards getting paid. Yeah. So there's a lot in sponsorship deals and things like that. So,
and what I've noticed too, and I don't know, maybe Duarne, share me your thoughts on this one, but what I have noticed was, one, you hit it right. They're content creators probably first, AI second, or maybe they were AI and then they're content creators. But their goal is to talk about every single thing that's changing, every single thing that's coming out. But there's no practical implication of what they're doing, right? There's no like, hey, this is how you should be doing this if you are X, Y, and Z. There's none of that. And so that's why it really is important to take a lot of that high level, hype, as you called it, right, with a grain of salt and just figure out what makes sense.
Well, I learned this a long time ago during crypto, right? I mean, crypto, when I was doing my crypto mining, crypto trading 4 or 5 years ago, there was so much bloody crap coming out on such a quick pace on YouTube, you couldn't keep up with it. And I realized if it was already on YouTube, it was already old news. And it took so long to get up. If you're watching anything and it's AI related about Claude, Codex, Gemini, basically any AI coding language, and it's more than 7 days old, there's a bloody good chance it's outdated. And that's the truth for a lot of that stuff. Now, it's not a general how-to guide, like in the traditional sense, like how to set up a piece of software, because the stuff is changing so rapidly. But in the same regard, just be careful of that hype, because my phone, I subscribe to a bunch of channels, and you'll get the long form converted into the short form, and then your phone will just blow up with all of these little short forms for long form stuff that you've already watched, and give you the snippets. And sometimes you get some good stuff out of it, but a lot of times it's a lot of noise at you. And for me, I found a lot of the ones I just started unsubscribing to were, the new OpenClaw just came out. You need to know about these features. They've just changed the way OpenClaw is going to handle the SEO. And it's like, it's too much hype.
And you said it right. They're, you don't want to
sensationalizing.
You don't want to call it clickbait, right? But it kind of is, because they have to get you to click on the video and watch.
Yes.
There's been a lot of times lately, which is why I actually, now that I'm in it and just doing it 100%, I don't watch as much. But when I first was getting started like 4 months ago, like I was trying to consume anything that I could. But what I started to realize was that they would come out with a new video or a new topic or a new, headline or whatever, but yet the majority of the concept in there was the same stuff that they've already said. There was nothing really new that they were talking about. They were just releasing another video to, in a different way to get the content out again. And that's their goal. Right? And if you realize, like, that's their goal, they have to put out more videos to get more views to get paid. Whereas somebody like you and I, we're like, no, well, fuck the views. Like, I don't know. I mean, I love doing this. Like, I love that you guys are watching this, right? And I would be happy if this was, continues to grow, which it is. But our ultimate goal is not necessarily this. Our ultimate goal is, how do we continue to implement and solve people's problems? And I know for a fact, if I wanted to, we could start putting out videos like that are specific and how-tos and all of that. But nobody will. One, I just don't have the time to do it, but we do all that kind of in the, our Triumph studio where we help people kind of implement that stuff. But I just don't have the time to create the videos. But that would get tons of stuff if you just did that.
Well, that's it. And you got to remember, a lot of these content creators are actually paid to create content. That's their business. That's how they make money. So they'll sit there and create all this content, a lot of them, not all of them, and that's how they get paid. They get paid. Like, if you look at them like, I got sponsored to by this company, and they've just sent me 4 Mac Studios worth $10,000 each so that I could do this test and show you how well Kimmy runs across all of these platforms as an AI, blah, blah, blah. Watch as I fail 50 times and eventually get it right. It's great and it's fun to watch. And then you realize that it's a sponsored, it's by a couple of companies. They're open about that, but you've got to take it on face value. But if you're watching to learn,
Apple send them to studio, like all 4 of them. Like, again, like you list, like they say it. They're like, oh yeah, by the way, like just letting you know, like I was sent these by Apple. Like I didn't pay for these.
I would never pay for these. These are so expensive. I've got to send them back in a month.
But it's all content. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And ultimately, it's from the people sponsoring the videos that are trying to generate sales, because what will happen is people will see that. They're going to be like, that's the best thing since sliced bread, not thinking, how do I practically use it? Right.
Yep.
And then they go out and they buy these Mac Studios, maybe not 4 or 5 of them, but maybe they buy 2 and they don't need them. And then they end up wasting the money and they just don't ever practically implement. And that's where I saw a thing the other day. And it said like before AI, and then it had like 2, the typical like people waiting behind a door. Right. But the 2 things were, I think it was idea and then execution. And the one thing I didn't disagree with is, those were kind of the same size of group, where the idea group and the execution group was roughly the same. But the thing I disagree with is that I still think even before AI, there was tons of people with ideas that they just didn't know how to execute. So like, if I were to do that same diagram again, it would have idea group still huge, and then execution group, smaller, right? Smaller line. And then said after AI, and how they changed it was there's even more people in the idea group and then even less people in execution. And I kind of get it, because if you think about it, there's now, when you think of AI, there's just so many more, it just opens up many more lanes. And so while I do believe there are way more people in the idea lane, and things that they have an idea, maybe they start to build, but they're never going to finish. I do agree that on the actual execution, the actual deliverable, there's going to be less people. And that's where it really kind of comes down to, does it make sense? In the end, whatever you're thinking or wanting to do or build, does it solve a problem? Does it save time? Those are the 2 things that are going to determine success of a platform or a dashboard or an internal workflow, anything. Those are the 2 things that are going to determine if it's going to be a success. If it's just a nice to have where it adds more costs, or it wasn't a problem to begin with, but now it's creating problems, well, that thing's going to go by the wayside pretty quick. You know what I mean? So you have to do a lot of analysis on your processes first before you even get started in AI.
Oh, yeah. You got to do the research. I mean, it's a bit like you've got to know what your outcome is at the end. How many times, those car shows? I love watching car restoration shows, right? And
no, I couldn't tell from your earlier message.
So when you watch a car restoration, right, and you're watching, if they've got a client in mind, like Counts Customs, for example, have a client in mind.
I like him.
They build to suit the client, right? But then you got these other guys who they get on there and they build a car so sensational and crazy the way they want it, that then they sit there and struggle to sell it for months and months and months and months and months. Now, I totally get that, because we used to do the custom bike building, and we would build a custom bike and then we'd paint it the colors that I thought were pretty cool, bright, outrageous colors. And we'd do some fun stuff with the paint and the design and the styling. And it was great. A lot of people appreciated it, but not a lot of people were willing to shell out the money, because they just wanted a black motorcycle. That's it. They wanted the cool things that we did, but in black. And we actually had a bunch of people that, hey, well, if you repaint it black, I'll buy it from you. And I'm like, nah, I'm good. And that's the same sort of scenario, right? If you want to build something, you need to understand who it's for if you plan to sell it. if you're building internal software, it's really easy because you know who you're building it for. It's for internal use. You know what your case is. So if you are going to start building something, I would recommend don't build something to sell for your first project. Build something to solve a problem you've got internally that you understand intimately, and then just improve on that. And once you've done it, you'll find yourself going, oh, I could solve this other person's problem with this product as well. And then look at building that product out, but do it from the point of view of what problems are you solving with that product you're building.
And when you got to realize too, like the majority of you here that are watching the show or watching the replay, whatever it may be, you don't need to focus on anything else besides internal. Like if your business is not focused on providing support in this arena, like you shouldn't be thinking outside the box right now. Like your whole focus should be internal. How do I become more efficient? How do our teams become more efficient to do more with less and free up more time to do what makes us money, right? Yeah. And, when you think about that, and it kind of goes back to like two lists, and I've talked about these two lists in previous episodes, but I'm going to bring it up here again because it's where you have to get started, and I talked about it in our panel discussion yesterday. The first list, and you have to do this before you kind of determine where you're going to go, but the first list is what are all the things that you are doing right now manually that are taking up your time? And you would like to have some sort of automation or be fully automated. Because remember, some workflows make sense where it's 80% auto or AI generated, and then there's a 10% at the beginning or 10% at the end, human element that just reviews and approves. That's your first list. So that's all of those things that you're doing that's taking up all your time. Write down how many hours it's taking you that you're just like, man, I wish we didn't have to do this anymore manually. I wish it just kind of gave us the output. Great. That's list number one. List number two are those things that you need to be doing or that you wish you had more time to do. And this could be internally, it could be externally in terms of, hey, I wish I had more time to spend time with my family, or I wish I had more time to, put out more social media or create more videos, like whatever it is, put that on list two. And then those two lists, when you're done, are going to kind of point you in the right direction of where you should be either creating something or developing a workflow, et cetera. Because some of your stuff on list two are just going to be like, oh, we can develop a workflow for that. And then we give it the information. Most of the stuff on list one are going to be the things that you're going to eventually build a workflow on. So they're going to direct you and generate your roadmap. And the next thing is don't try to do it all at once. Start with 2 or 3 and then get those completely done and then work through it. So prioritize your list, because the biggest thing I hear from a lot of people is they want to solve everything at once. They're like, I have all these problems and I want AI to solve them. Okay, great. Which one do you want to start with? All of them. I'm like, no, we can't do that. Your attention is going to be diverted. And plus, do you have the 40 hours a week to develop to do all of them? Well, no, I don't have all that. Like I still got to service clients and get a couple. Exactly. So what's the one thing right now that's going to give you the most impact? And then let's start there. And that's what you have to focus on in your business or internally in your organization. If you're a bigger organization, that's where you put your attention first. And then you work through it. And the one thing you mentioned, and I'll let you go back to it, but make sure you have the stakeholders involved in the process. As the owner, CEO, whatever you are of your business, or maybe your C-level, make sure when you're working through an AI process that you involve every level that is going to be impacted by that AI. So it's not just like, oh, we're going to go do this at the C-suite and the executive level, and then we're going to force it down to everybody else. And then once it's kind of built and developed, then we'll give it to everybody. You're going to miss things that are overlooked. And trust me, I get this from my executive experience at corporate. There's a lot of things that we think are happening in the processes that once you actually have that conversation with the team members, you realize, maybe steps 3 and 4 were like dropped years ago because they weren't efficient anymore, or they weren't needed, and they just did it all in step 6. But if you build an AI to do 3 and 4, like now you just wasted time. So it's so important to think of all the stakeholders throughout that process and involve them all when you're going through it, especially if you're, a bigger organization. Even if you're 10 employees, that's so important. But if you're
even
an individual,
2 employees or 3 employees, right? I mean, what like we witnessed earlier, I mean, just because you have systems, if you don't actually review your systems, if you don't check your systems, you don't know what's happening. and that can be a huge detrimental cost to you and your business in the future.
Right.
One of the things that we witness is there's assumptions made on how people do tasks in our business. I've had this so many times where I'm just assuming something's done one way, then I'll complain to the team, why is this taking so long? Or why am I getting this result? I thought we did it this way. Isn't this how we trained it? Oh no, we've been doing it this way because that was what we thought was the better way to do it. And it's like, well, hold on. I designed it specifically this way because that needs to be done so I can do this, this, and this, because I understood the whole picture and I'd never shared the whole picture because at the time I didn't think it was value to do that with the staff because they didn't need to see the whole picture. Well, AI is different. AI needs to know the whole picture because if it doesn't know the whole picture, it can't warn you about things that are coming up that you need to be considerate of and aware of.
And it's going to, it will make up the steps if it needs to, right? And that's what you don't want to happen. So that's why you want to have the entire process mapped out first, and then you give that instruction to the AI process to work through it. Create it into a document, a workflow document, and then at every level, right? The most important thing to do would be each level has its skill, right? So that it's repeatable and it goes back and does the same thing over and over again instead of just saying, hey, go run through this process. Like, you have to create the skills associated with it. And so that's why it's not as simple as just like, oh, I want you to create this workflow for me. Okay, what happens from there? And I'll give an example this past week. One of my clients is using Claude and connecting it to Go High Level. And so part of the process was, hey, go to Go High Level and build out the workflows, build out the automations and the landing pages, and let me know when it's done. And I think Claude's like, okay, do you want me to go do it now? And the client was like, yeah, go do it. Reports back that it's done. And now it created these things. It created different workflows and created the different steps with the different copy and all this kind of stuff. But the client didn't know what to check for. The client didn't know because the client's never done any of that stuff in Go High Level. So then when I get in and I'm like, okay, let's take a look at what it built, I realized that how it built it was inefficient. All the workflows were being kicked off by tags being added. But then there was no automation to add tags to the prospects. So it's like all the tags then had to be added manually. So it's like, this isn't an automation process. It was expecting people to book without booking through the appointment schedule, which is typically what you would want to have your automation trigger would be, hey, somebody booked into this webinar, into this, work session. So then put them into this automation. Well, no, it's like, hey, when you add the tag work session registered, now we're just going to go into this automation. So this is where, AI is good at developing process, but you have to remember it's like a entry-level intern. You have to be able to give it that direction or have trained it in a specific way to do those things over and over and over again. And if you haven't, it's going to give you that basic level intern output. And if you, for that same process, are an intern yourself, you're not going to be able to check that it did it right.
100%.
And so part of the result for that was like, yeah, it didn't do anything. I thought it was sending out messages and getting people registered. And then when I came to the registration time, like I realized like nobody was actually registered. And I'm like, oh, did you double check? Like, what's going on? And that's how we kind of jumped in and kind of looked at it. And I realized like none of this is correct. You know what I mean? In terms of like how it set it up. 90%, well, I'd say 80% of it was set up, right? But it's at 20%.
You know what it comes down to,
still,
right? This is something that was given as an analogy recently that I heard, and I thought it was pretty spot on. When you build a house, do you go to the builder or the general contractor and say, build me a house, and then just let them go hard? Or do you go and talk to an architect first? You get your architect to create the design, you work through the architect, you make sure it's right. Then you go and work with the the engineering to make sure it's actually going to do what it needs to do when its load bearings are right and stuff. I'm not a builder, so I may be using wrong terminology here. You probably need to consult your interior design to make sure you've got all of your materials inside sorted out correctly. And then once you've got all that sort of cool stuff done, you go and include all your trades. And there was a scenario recently explained to me that somebody went and built a bunch of extensions in this building without consulting the data cabler, without consulting the electrician, without consulting the plumber. So none of this was installed in the building prior, because basically they didn't get an architect and an engineer in first to take a look at it. It was just an extension. We don't need that. And then when they come in after, it's like, well, we've got to rip all that drywall out. We've got to be able to get access to that. Oh, we're gonna have to get all that put back in. So, well, you're gonna get your, you got to get your carpenters back in to do that.
And so this is why too, I don't think like AI is ever going to take over everything from this piece, because of the fact that there's still that knowledge of the individual workflows, processes, whatever you want it to do, that a human needs to be involved with. Now, maybe in the future, will it have all knowing knowledge of everything? Maybe, but just think of what that means. Just think of that back end that they would need to have all knowing knowledge of every single software platform that's ever been released and how it should be done. No.
Yeah.
That's why you're unique as a business owner with your experience. That's why your AI is trained differently than maybe Duarne and I's AI, because you're unique in what you want it to look at, right? When you think of a go high level, and I'm sure there's people out there doing it right now, they're probably training some sort of AI process on how to do the workflows efficiently, on how to build them correctly with their skills.
Yep.
And here's the beauty of some of that. We mentioned before, there's probably some public repos out there. I'm sure there's probably a couple public repos out there that have open source skills related to Go High Level or any other platform that you can copy the link to the GitHub repo. You go to your Claude and you say, hey, I want to potentially use some of the information in this GitHub repo. Analyze the repo and tell me what we should be doing and what we should bring in or what we should create.
Analyze first. Don't just make the assumption.
Don't just bring in the whole thing. Yeah.
No. And this is something we've seen so many times. Like in the website world, people just go and install a plugin without doing any testing or research, and then it breaks something. It's the same thing. If you're going to use like a tool, make sure it's the right one. Like if you're going to integrate Stripe into your website, you probably want to use the Stripe official supported plugin to do that, not some third party that's done it. Because even though the third party could do it, it might have a bunch of security vulnerabilities that you're not aware of. You're not a developer; you're not going to know that. And it's the same thing goes for these skills. There was actually a big problem that I was reading about, that when OpenClaw first came out, there was so many skills and options and stuff uploaded in such a record time that people were grabbing and using, only to find out that there was malicious code in them. Mm-hmm. So they had malicious code in there that was potentially opening up vulnerabilities on their computers, and people and keylogging and all sorts of crazy stuff. And there was stuff they didn't even know about. And some of it was malicious. Some of it was just unintentional bad coding. It was bad information, right? Because it wasn't double checked. It wasn't triple checked. And it all comes down to, like you said before, if you don't know, use the tools to check it for you. I had an email XML file sent through the other day from Google. It looked official, and I dropped it in ChatGPT and said, I want you to analyze this and tell me, is this an official Google XML? And he went and checked and he said, actually, yeah, it is. Based on where it's coming from, based on the information provided. And the good news is it's all tech. It's all good. It's all ticked. Right? Great. I'm not an expert at reading those files, and I didn't want to open it on my computer in case there was some problem. it was able to open it and view it without opening it on my computer and do it safely. And I let it do it. It took the risk for me, and it gave me the answer. I got a professional answer without being a professional. And I guess that's where the scenario is. I've been building computers recently for a project I'm working on, and I get stuck sometimes. I'll take a photo of the motherboard and go, this memory configuration is not booting. Can you give me an indication? Oh, you've got that in the wrong DIMM slot. Move it on this particular model. You have to put it on this bank because that bank doesn't work unless you're using this type of CPU. Oh, of course I'm going to know that. I could go and look that stuff up and watch 100 videos and read Reddit, forums, channels. Eventually I'll get it, or I could just keep trying. Or I can ask the question and get it to help me find an answer quickly, or at least point me in the right direction to test new things. And that's where you can find so many use cases with AI, it's not even funny anymore. It's to the point where I ask myself, am I going to go on YouTube and try and find a video on how to do something? Or am I just going to ask ChatGPT in my instance to go and search for it myself and say, hey, go and look on YouTube and see what you can find about this. While you're at it, go check Reddit and see if anyone's talking about this, and make a reference to any videos that I should be watching about this.
Well, so those are the cool things that, and we'll drop it with this because we're already over an hour. Crazy how quick time flies when you're talking AI. But that's where creating your repeatable process, like if you want, like for yourself, right? You have your research that you'd like to do. Building that research into an engine or a repeatable system on your Claude or wherever you're using, whether it's code. And this is where I've really moved a lot of my processes off of just Claude code co-work and actually moved them into creating specific engines in code, because I don't know if you've realized this, but like Claude code actually can now do a lot of the stuff that Cowork was doing in terms of like going to the browser and doing all this different stuff that Cowork kind of hung its hat on. Which I get it. Like, and there's still some things that I still have to use Cowork for that code can't do, but code, you can get a lot more in-depth, quicker response times with the CLI and all that stuff, instead of having go out to the website, pull it down, open it up, all that kind of stuff. So there are some efficiencies there. And so taking like a research engine as an example and telling, when you go through the first process and you've gotten the result that you wanted, okay, great. I want you to take what we just did and I want you to turn that into a skill, a research skill. And then from there, going to your code and saying, around this skill, I want to build a research engine where I can drop an idea. It pulls ideas for me at the beginning of every day, but I can also give it inspiration to go find something if I needed to. And now you have a repeatable system that you don't have to like go and think of, how did I prompt that last time to get the result? That's the beautiful thing right now, is that you don't have to continually remember. You don't have to be a prompt engineer anymore to make things impactful. The idea now is how do you just build that repeatable system to get the same results? So I'll leave it with that.
It's being clever, right? Like using these tools that we've got and using them in different ways. Like I'm using Codex this last couple of weeks, building out some apps, and I've got it automatically set up to my VM via SSH for access with its own unique login details. And I say, hey, I want you to go and check my VM for why this isn't working. And it goes over and it fixes a problem. I want you to report to me and ask for their approval before making any changes. Never make changes to the data. So, and it comes back saying, all right, did not change the data. I need to do this. I need to restart this service. Is that okay? Sure, go ahead.
Right.
Like, you can use these tools to help you and guide you in directions. Knowing what it's doing is really helpful because you want to make sure you're doing it right. But make a mistake. And I had one instance where I overwrote all my data, my test data that was in the system, and I had to go and put it all back in. And look, I just happen to have enough exports of certain information to be able to get Codex to put most of it back in for me, but I still had to go through and fix a lot of it. Right. So these systems are smart, but they're not foolproof. So before you just go saying yes, you need to understand some basics with it. Right. So I really love the idea of building internal apps. So I really love the idea of just taking something like as simple as a spreadsheet and then utilizing that into a dashboard that you can use internally and maybe even taking an old Access database. I know I'm going back a bit there, right? And converting that Access database into an interactive app that you can use.
And that's the beauty of, and these are, and hopefully, I mean, my takeaway that I hope you guys got from today's episode, if you're watching this or you're watching a replay, live, but taking the idea, like the things that we're saying here, practicality wise, and think of how can you do those in your business. Like taking something that is supposed to be a tracking spreadsheet that everybody has access to, and then they post all their information to regularly, like putting that into a quick online KPI dashboard that works on mobile, that instead of people having to log in and go to the spreadsheet and find it and implement the data, they can just open their phone and drop in the data right there from the results. Like, how do you make your people's jobs easier as well, your employees' jobs easier? Like, that's where this all comes down to. And you mentioned it, you may think, oh man, it's going to take a long time for us to like take an old Access database or a spreadsheet and get the information in here. Here's how freaking awesome like this stuff is you can take that database, give it to your Claude Code and say, hey, I want to take all of this information and then I need to backfill the data, and it'll do it for you,
Yep.
and it'll fill in whatever, and so you got to figure out yourself what database you want to use, whether it's Firestore or, a Supabase, wherever your backend build's going to be. But now you have it in a virtual environment, protected. It's not on a spreadsheet on your computer, and it's backed up, all of that kind of stuff, so that you're able to
you set it up to be accessible from anywhere in the world if you set it up correctly. So one of those days where you have to call Melinda in the office because she's the only one who has the access to the computer,
right.
Sitting in the back room behind your desk, where the access is sitting on that computer that's 15, 20 years old, because you can't throw it out because it's running the perfect software of that version of the database.
And that's where, like, it's one of those things where the biggest thing when I was in the corporate world was that we want every one of our managers to have their own dashboard. They can see their own information. Well, you know how easy that is to build now, but we went through 4 or 5 different, sort of accounting CRM softwares back then, and they wanted, what were they charging? I think the one we ended up on was like $35,000 a year for access for all this information. And I'm just thinking to myself, holy shit, like just how easy I can create that now and build it so that it works with the authentication of who's logging in and what their roles are. And man, if we had this access back then, like we could be so much more efficient. But the beauty of that now is that every one of my clients, first thing, you can do it yourself. Like, you don't need me if you want to take the time and do it yourself. Like, you don't need Duarne and I, in your business to do it. I'm going to be honest with you with that. If somebody says, oh yeah, you can't do this, they're lying to you. Anything that we tell you, you can go and do yourself. But this is why we're saying it the way that we are. You can do any of this, right? The biggest thing that things like in businesses like Duarne and I's is that it saves you time, it saves you the anxiety, it saves you the stress, right, around it. And some of the time, for me, I set it up and we handle a lot of the back end in terms of like the cost and stuff like that, so that you don't have to. It's just built in, so that you're not trying to constantly update it and worry about it. So those are the things that you have to really analyze and figure out. Do you want to invest all the time into figuring out how to build it, or is it better to just work with somebody and partner with somebody that you trust? It doesn't have to be us, but find somebody locally or anybody that you trust. That you're like, hey, let's do this. And that's where I want you to kind of take away is you can do anything we talk about. Anything you see right now, the ability is there for you to do it all yourself. You just have to decide, do you want to do it yourself, or do you want to partner with somebody to do it?
It's an upskill. And if you're not willing to upskill, or you don't have the time to upskill, or don't have the capacity, some people just mentally don't have the capacity to upskill, or it's not the right time for it.
Passion that we want, right? You have to have a passion around it. I said that, yesterday in the panel was, how did you get where you are? And I'm like, well, I'm passionate about what I'm doing right now. Like I come into the office and I could be here for 13 hours a day, and it does not feel like 13 hours. The time flies, but I love what I'm doing. Yeah. And I think sometimes it's hard for my fiance to be like, well, how are you still at the office? I'm like, because I got so much to do. I feel like I'm behind, but I love what I'm doing. Like, and I want to be home. I get it, but this is that the moment of being a business owner where it's, hey, I'm putting all this time in for this like year, 2, 3 years to get it up and running, to then the next 15 afterwards, I don't have to. That's the ultimate goal, right? And so that's why you have to be willing to kind of do that and have that passion. And if you don't have the passion around it, you're not going to do it. You're not going to wake up at 7 a.m. and then be here, be at the office till 8 p.m. You're not going to, be willing to sit at a desk for that long. You're not going to want to work on Saturdays because you want to continue to build for people. You're not going to set up client meetings at like, Duarne, it's, 10 p.m. at night for you. You're not going to do that if you're not passionate about what you're working on. But you have to be passionate in order to make it a success. And if you're not passionate about AI development, then don't try to be. Just because you can do it, that's the thing you have to decide on. That's the biggest piece.
Same thing goes if you're already, say you're a tradesperson and that's your business, and you're already on the tools from 7 and you knock off at 7, and you're already dealing, and that last couple of hours is dealing with the accounting part or dealing with your marketing part. The idea of doing something with AI and learning a whole new skill may just be the most insane idea for you, or the most over-the-top time for you to be able to do, and that's fine. No one's saying you have to. But you might want to find a partner who's willing to invest the time to do it for you. Right. Then you can get some of that time back. Maybe that extra couple of hours of an evening you're spending doing some of that marketing or doing some of that accounting could be brought back into as an automation or some AI tools that you use in-house. Another really big one is that the amount of industries that have, like you mentioned before, industry-specific software that charges a fortune to run. And some of this stuff is just insane. And it's thousands of dollars a month to run this stuff. And in a lot of cases, you could build out a lot of this stuff to solve your problems, because that software might solve 50, 100 problems that you don't have. But it solves one of your problems. So if you can solve your one problem without having to spend those thousands of dollars, then maybe building something or having it built for you is a really good solution, because you're going to save money long term. It's a bit like installing solar on your roof, right? You're going to spend a lot of money up front, but you're going to get savings ongoing from your power usage.
Well, and this is where, I know we're way too long right now, so we'll wrap it up now. But the ultimate thing is you just have to realize, you said it, and I said it earlier. What is the priority to save you the time now to free up you, the business owner, and your team to do the things that are actually going to drive the business forward and grow, right? If you're not able to do more estimates, or you're not able to generate more interest or more leads because you're doing a lot of these things manually, that's what's hindering your business. Yeah. And what are those things that are holding you back? Those are the things that you need to look at and build. And if you're not willing to do that, then I guess you're not really dedicated to your growth. And that's where
your focus is maybe in the wrong position, right? I mean, and you need to have you need to do that reevaluation with yourself and your business. We've talked about it in other episodes. Like, have that hard look, have that hard conversation.
Yeah.
But
with that, so Duarne, what do you hope? What's your thing that you hope somebody takes away from today's episode? I already said mine. So.
Look, I hope that people stop paying attention to all the hype around AI for a minute and actually give it a go and try solving a problem that you've got, or at least asking questions to learn how to use the tools or achieve a outcome that you're trying to get.
Yeah.
And then decide if that's something you want to proceed with these tools that we have available. You'd be very surprised what you can achieve with a $20 subscription to ChatGPT. You'd be very surprised what you can achieve with a $20 subscription to Claude. It's very intriguing what they actually offer at the moment. Take advantage of it, because these companies are getting a little bit more stringent on how many tokens they're going to give you in their packages. it's kind of like getting you addicted to using the tools right now, and then eventually the prices are going to go up, or the usage capabilities are going to go down. So take advantage, get in and use it now, solve some problems now, and work out how it's going to work in your business. And just one thing to be really careful of is, if you are getting started, avoid the API tokens for now. Just focus on the where you can eat buffet, where you're signing up for the
all you can eat.
$20.
Not all you can eat. You're still limited with the subscription.
No, that's what I mean. It's like there is rules and limitations to this. So the $20, the $100, the $200 plans. Just start with those. I spoke to someone the other day who was really proud about building a website, and he spent $400 in tokens. And I looked at the website and I was like, oh, could have done that with a $20 subscription.
Right.
It was just approached it the wrong way. So, but yeah, be willing to fail and learn from your mistakes, and have some fun while you're doing it. And hopefully you get as passionate as we do.
But if you don't, that's okay. Like, you probably have a passion somewhere else in doing what you're doing in your business and serving your clients, and that's completely fine as well. So,
absolutely,
whatever works for you. But with that, we appreciate you. We love you. We hope you guys are doing an amazing, and we want to see you grow. So feel free to share your wins and everything down below. With that, we're here live every single week, every Friday morning. We talk everything like this, more AI. I'm sure there's going to be more and more AI and different strategies and impacts that you can do in your business on a regular basis.
Didn't we go a few weeks where we tried not to mention?
We tried not to, but I think it's just so impactful.
It's so
that we're going to keep talking about it. You know, we've talked finances and stuff like that, which is also important. But I think AI is generating a lot of it as well. So with that, we hope to see you in the next episode next week. If you have any questions ahead of time, feel free to share them down below. And then have a wonderful week, and we'll see you. Duarne, thanks for joining me, and we'll see everybody in the next one.
Bye, everybody. Thanks.